What's up, everybody? My name is Bryce, aka DubsNotSubs, and today we're going to be doing a video on whether Kentaro Murayama's Berserk is better or whether Kentaro Murayama's Giganto is better. So without further ado, let's get right into this video. First off, before we get into this video, I just want to say a couple things. This is my personal opinion. This is all subjective, and I'm doing this for fun. Both these series are great, and I love both of them. You should check them both out. Kentaro Murayama is a great writer, great manga artist. Both these series are very good. And also, I've only read up to volume 6 of Berserk, so that's all I'm going to be going through. Get both these series first off before we actually do this video. But without further ado, let's get into the argument. Alright, for this argument, there are basically two main differences for the stories that basically separate how all the characters act and what their world and settings are all like. Besides that, one's a sci-fi fantasy and one's a medieval fantasy. So first off, the two main differences is Berserk is basically a story about revenge, and that Giganto is a story about saving or being this great power. So Berserk, for a little synopsis I have pulled up here, this is just the Wikipedia of it, and so this says, Guts is a wandering mercenary who has known war and death since he was born from hanged corpses and saved by his adopted mother, who died from the plague when he was only 3 years old. Griffith forces Guts to join his forces upon defeating him in battle. That's basically the synopsis for that. And this is a story about a guy who's a lot darker, and a very dark story that Kentaro Murayama goes for, with the stories, the themes of very graphic fight scenes, gruesome, graphic, I mean, they're cutting off arms, heads, legs, dicks, anything. And everything's good for this Berserk thing. They'll cut everything off. And basically there's rape in there, there's sexual stuff, a lot of abuse, drug abuse, a lot of different messed up things in Berserk. Giganto, on the other hand, is a story about, let me pull it right here, read the synopsis of this, is 100 million years after the Great Destruction, life hangs on the wastelands with humans, demi-humans, and massive creatures fighting for survival. With the Empire of Olympus using its colossal beast to crush its adversaries, only Gladiator Delos, Mystic Prom, and the Titan Gora they become can hope to stem genocide and heal the shattered earth. So basically, this story is about two people taking over your more basic, stereotypical, these two underdogs are trying to take over a great, overlooming evil power that is the Empire Olympus. So these guys basically, they team up and they can turn in, like it says, a giant kaiju, which is this basically human metal form of Gora, or not Gora, of Delos. And this one takes a lot more of a lighthearted aspect to it. The characters themselves are have a lot more comedy in between them, and the fight scenes you see from them have, first off, with the first fight scene, which is when he ends up at a beetle village, where the people are a hybrid of humans and beetles because they've evolved into this form. They become as he enters, they are treated as enemies and end up fighting each other. Their strongest warrior, so Delos fights him and decides to, instead of fighting him and killing him like more of a Berserk thing where he would just probably slaughter him and assert dominance, Delos takes a stand of never killing and never hating. So as he fights him, he takes all these punches, and the reason these hybrid beetles are so mad is because of their hatred toward the Empire, and they see Delos as one of those people from the Empire, which Delos is not. He's actually a gladiator who was forced into slavery and forced to fight day in and day out forever until he eventually escaped, which is never explained why he escapes, but that's not really important to the actual part. So he fights him, takes all the punches, and then defeats him in a way that has everyone, turns the crowd who eventually starts off hating him, changes to admiration and more of a I guess admiration would just be the word. No more hatred. They kind of see that he's not really a bad guy or whatever. So that's basically the two main things: of a lighthearted main character and then a very serious, very dark main character. And then there's also the supporting characters of Prom and then the fairy, who I forgot his name. Give me a second. Alright, it's Prom and Puck. Both these characters do have a very different aspect to them. Puck is more like this lighthearted fairy who kind of gives off that pixie vibe, which is what he is. And then there is Prom, who is a spirit that has a very monotone kind of style, who's very technical and has this very I don't care attitude about mostly her body and the fact that if you ever seen the cover of it, which I just showed you, here, let me grab it. She is standing on top of his shoulders. There's a recurring joke in it where he talks about how she's too heavy and stuff and that he's tired, and she says, all right, then if you're tired, then why don't you just look up for some inspiration, because she just doesn't care. But she does, however, care an overwhelming amount about his life itself, and she has the power to take over his body and take control of him if something happens to go wrong and he might be in danger of death, which is never actually explored in this book. But it's a weird concept, or not a weird concept, a cool concept that I would have wished was explored in there. And then you have Puck, who basically has just this healer aspect to him, as more like this annoyance in Guts' ears. But yeah, both these characters, in a sense, are very good, but I love Prome's aspect more, with just this kind of all-knowing, this character that can basically explain the world, and more the sci-fi technical stuff that she all knows that explains how it goes throughout that book. Puck's more like just annoying. Well, he's not... He does get a little annoying at times, but he's not really bad in that sense. I do like him as a character, but I think Prome edges out on that. But now let's get into the actual two main characters, Guts and Delos. So Delos himself is a character that is very carefree, very lighthearted, and he, like I said earlier, doesn't hold any hate for somebody, because giving into hate, he claims is defeat in itself. Well, Guts, on the other hand, all he does is hate. But in the sense is, he's also very hypocritical with what he says about human life and not caring about anybody else. Because as you see in the first book, after a king, it is the first book, or maybe the second book, but the king who basically overthrows his kingdom and is evil, and his daughter, who he eventually saves, blames Guts and ends up hating him for what happens to his father, and says that she's gonna hate her whole life. He basically, to her face, says he doesn't care and has this whole, like, whatever kind of F you attitude, and then turns around, and then behind closed doors you see that he's very, like, hurt by the words and very grief-stricken by what happened and just everything that goes on, which really adds this really cool dynamic to his character. Well, like I said, Delos is very carefree, he's more open about who he is as a character. He doesn't hide deep down, but when you see both their paths, although Delos doesn't explore as much as Berserk does with Golden Age arc, is just his whole past. Delos himself is very gladiator, born and raised, fighting for a living, and just never understood the concept of fighting for or dying with honor, which is what happens later in that story when the hybrid beetle ends up coming into contact with the Empire, who decide to destroy them, and instead of trying to run away from their home, they decide to try to fight or die with honor, because they don't want to run away anymore. And so Delos' dynamic is more of a character trying to understand human pride, I guess, because he's never really had that. He just fights to survive every day, and it's either kill or be killed, is how he was raised. So with this two dynamics, I do really like both of them. It's kind of hard to say which one's better, because they're both so different, and the whole thing is better. But I gotta give it to Berserk. I gotta say Guts' character is better now I'm thinking about it. As much as I love Delos, Berserk's is just a little bit better with his dynamic and who he is as a character, and the interesting aspects of what actually happened to him that made him why he is. Which, that's just in the fact that Berserk is a lot more drawn out and has more books. Well, Giganto is one book, so they have to cut corners on some stuff. But yeah, this one goes to Guts, and this one is a point for Berserk. So yeah, the settings themselves. This one takes place in a medieval time, a fantasy world that is just basically back in the medieval times with knights, fights, and knights, demons, and things like that. Well, Giganto is a story about a dystopian future with giant creatures that are like kaijus that wander the earth and basically have all the power in the realm, with Delos being able to transform into one of them with the power of Prome. Now, the setting themselves, I will have to give to Giganto, because this comes off as way more creative and way more interesting of a world than the medieval world of Berserk. I love the aspect of these giant creatures wandering the earth and this dystopian future where people have all evolved and changed to just work with the circumstances that they've been in, like the beetle people, who are hybrids of beetles and humans, and they're called, I don't remember, there's like geos or something like that. They have like some weird name in there that doesn't really matter, but yeah, they're hybrids of half people, half beetles or whatever, and they're slowly transitioning more. And then there are the Gigantos and the Empire, who are these overwhelming power and are just kind of this evil power they're taking over. Well, as Berserk is, like I said, story revenge with a just normal humans and then demons showing up that have done something to just basically fuck with Guts. With Griffic, something goes wrong with Griffic because before the Golden Age arc and with Volume 6, it doesn't explain the betrayal yet. And he has just basically on a story revenge and trying to defeat all the demons and this mark that basically brands him as a person who is just basically for sacrifice. And just the aspect of Giganto's giant creatures in this huge dystopian future and them wandering this creative world as the end shows up. You get to see like little glimpses of other places around the world that they've been at. Just shows a far more interesting and great landscape of it. And overall, just a cooler concept, I feel like, for a story. But yeah, this one goes to Giganto. Last up, basically, it's just accessibility. Who would like more? Or who would be more open to accept it, more of a general audience, accessible to the general audience. Gigantos itself is very, very laid back compared to Berserk, because the stuff that happens a lot more. I believe it's a seinen, but it's not a dark seinen. There's a lot of with the comedy, like I said, the giant creatures, a lot more stuff that would be more appealing to a general audience than Berserk, on the other hand, which is dark, super messed up, and something that more of a specific audience for people like dark stories, like stories of revenge, characters who aren't typical shonen or cheerful characters. I was saying shonen because shonen characters are general. Delos feels more like it would fit into that shonen category way more than Berserk or Guts, because Guts would not fit into that at all, which isn't a bad thing. It works great for his story himself. But yeah, in the end, I have to say I love Gigantos, and so far, I'm just more of a sci-fi sucker, so that's kind of why I say that I like Gigantos more than that. Berserk, as I said, great series. For what it is and what it's trying to do is just almost perfect in every aspect. I love it, and it just comes down to personal opinion at the end of the day. Which one do you like? A darker fantasy story of revenge, or a sci-fi fantasy story about a dystopian future and taking over and defeating an evil power? And just the meld of Gigantos being a typical hero-villain, and then Berserk, it is a hero-villain kind of story, but Berserk doesn't go along the way of, he's more of an anti-hero, vigilante style, Batman style, just beats people up. Dark Knight does whatever he has to do, breaks bones, kills some people. Batman won't kill people, but I'm just saying Berserk will kill people, and well, that's his whole goal, is to kill everybody and all this evil presence. But he's not doing it for the greater good. He's doing it for his own personal gain, his own personal reason. But yeah, like I said, both these series are great. I love them both. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Tell me down in the comments below which one you like, Berserk and Gigantos, and tell me why. I'm really interested to see what you guys' opinion about this. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, I will see you in the next video.